Hi everyone. I am Nitin Somashekaran, and today I am going to have a small lecture on one of the fundamental concept of fluid mechanics, that is the Bernoulli's equation. And so today I'll be going through the derivation of the Bernoulli equation. The derivation will be in a very simplified manner, and there are a lot of assumptions involved. It is not a complete and exact derivation, but in a simplified manner, this derivation works. And after that, we will be doing some problems based on it. So let's get started with that. So the reason why I chose Bernoulli's equation is because it is a very simplified equation, and it's a very simple derivation. But the applications of the Bernoulli's equations are numerous, even when you look at it in a theoretical fashion or let it be in a very practical manner. You can, in GATE exams, you can find numerous questions arising out of the Bernoulli's equation. They're very simple to work out, and they carry easy marks. So that is one of the biggest reasons why I chose the Bernoulli's equation to be discussed today. And let's get it's a very simple but very powerful equation, and from a gate point of view it is really important too, because it can fetch you marks very fast because they are very you can work them out very quickly. So let's get started with the Bernoulli's equation, and I'll go through what are the assumptions involved, and what are the other things we are looking at when we are talking about the Bernoulli's equation. So Bernoulli's equation is nothing but a special case of the momentum equation. The momentum equation is nothing but the Navier-Stokes equation in our case, or let's say the Newton's second law being applied to a control volume. And this is a special case of momentum equation. That is when I say that when I make certain simplifications to the momentum equation, like for example, it is inviscid, so all the viscosity terms I can ignore, and the flow is steady, that all the time derivatives are going to be zero, and the compressibility I'm going to assume it's not present. That is, the density is not a function of pressure. So when I make these assumptions and try to simplify the equation, and so that is where I end up with my Bernoulli's equation. And the actual way of deriving the Bernoulli's equation is by integrating the Navier-Stokes equation in a vector, manner, because the Navier-Stokes equation is a vector equation. But here today I'll be discussing a very simplified derivation. This is so thing to keep in mind is that this is not the exact derivation, but this just works, well, under a lot of simplifications, and it'll do the job for us today. So when it comes to actual derivation, it calls for a much more detailed session because there are a lot of operations involved and there are a lot of understandings to be made out of it. So today I'll be having a very simplified, derivation, which I'm repeating again is not the actual derivation. So let's move on. So here to derive the Bernoulli's equation, I have assumed um, uh, for our derivation, I'm going to assume a cylindrical fluid element over here, as you can see in the screen. And this cylindrical fluid element, this one, which I'm talking about, I have chosen such a shape, for my fluid element because, so here my assumption or, my consideration is that, so I'm having a streamline, and all of you know that, the streamline basically shows, the direction of the velocity vector. And I am assuming that there is a fluid element of this particular shape, surrounding it, or I'm drawing a cylindrical shaped fluid element, around the streamline. So the reason why I go for a cylindrical shaped fluid element is that it offers me a lot of simplicity in terms of what are the forces acting on it. I can easily sum up or take the component of the forces acting on it, and there are many forces which does not contribute to the end form of the equation that I can straight away neglect from the beginning itself. So as I've mentioned, this is a very simplified derivation. So, this is one simplification which I'm doing over here. That is, it's a cylindrical control, or cylindrical fluid element, that I'm talking about, or the cylindrical control volume, you can say, in case. So that is the first simplification which I'm doing. So I have a cylindrical fluid element, and it has got a area of dA, on both sides. Both these sides have area dA, and it has got a height of ds. That is, it's a very infinitesimal control volume length which I'm looking at. So what I'm going to do with this is that, so now the task here is to understand what are the forces acting on this fluid element, sum them up, and then try to get a Bernoulli's equation from that. So I'm going to, so there are three forces which you need to take care of. That is the pressure force, the body force, and the viscous force. The pressure force definitely is one thing, which can definitely act upon this control volume per se. So, from this side, on the left side, I'm assuming the pressure acting to be P. And on this side, I'm assuming the pressure acting to be P plus dP. So this is nothing but, as I'm moving from this end to this end, there is a small increment in the pressure because of a variety of reasons. It could be the change in velocity, or the weight of the fluid. So a lot of things could contribute to this infinitesimal change in the pressure. So that is, one the pressure force which I'm considering. So since these surfaces have area dA, the pressure acting on this surface will be PdA, and pressure acting on this surface will be P plus dP times dA. And also my direction of motion, is the direction of the streamline. That is this. So I'm taking that to be my positive convention for my direction. And anything, in the direction opposite to it, I would, have a negative notation to it. Just some sign conventions, that I'll be following. So we have resolved our, the pressure forces. That is the PdA force acting on this side. So we know that pressure always act normal to the surface, and the pressure over this surface is acting in the positive direction of motion. So this force would be positive PdA, and the pressure force acting on this side is in the direction opposite to the direction of motion. So I'm going to, depict it with a negative sign, P plus dP minus P plus dP dA. So now we know what are the pressure forces. Now let's look at the body force. So we know that the body force is because of the weight of the fluid element, and it always acts vertically downwards. So the weight of the fluid element is nothing but the mass of the fluid element times g. And the mass of the fluid element, in this case, you can think of it as nothing but the density of the fluid element, and we have already assumed incompressibility, so the density does not change with in which the with the coordinate, or spatially it does not vary, or temporally it does not vary. Density times the volume of the fluid element times g. And if you look at this as cylindrical volume, or cylindrical fluid element, or control volume, let's say, and the volume would be nothing but the area here times the height, just like how you have a cylindrical area, that is pi r square h. So pi r square is nothing but the area here, h is nothing but the height of the cylinder. So here the area is dA, and the height is ds, and finally g. So your body force, or the weight of the fluid element is nothing but rho dA ds times g. Now, here we are looking at all the forces which are in the direction of motion, or which are lie in that particular direction. So let's say our pressure force over here was in the direction of motion, which we saw because they were normal to the control volume surface, or the surface of the fluid element. And um, so we also need to resolve your your body force in similar directions. So let's say that the streamline is making an angle theta with the vertical, which you see over here. So the streamline is not exactly horizontal or vertical, it makes an angle with them. So we know that the weight acts exactly perpendicular, I mean exactly vertically because of the direction of gravity. Now with this theta, if I were to take the component of the body force in the direction of motion, it will be nothing but rho g dA ds cos theta. So rho g dA ds, as we discussed earlier, was the weight of the fluid element, and its projection onto the direction of the streamline is nothing but the cos theta. So now we have the body force too. Now the last thing which we need to take care is the viscous force, but we have already assumed that the viscous forces are zero, that the flow is inviscid. So you don't have to take care of it. So we have all the things which we need. We have the pressure force, we have the body force, and let's do a force balance with that and try to end up with the Bernoulli's equation. And also one more small thing which you need to consider is that, let's say, just a geometrical factor, it's a geometrical manipulation which you can do to make things simpler. So let's say that this end of the fluid element is at a height z1 from some base reference, let's say, and this is at a vertical height of z2, and this, as we know, has a length ds, I'm sorry, ds. So the vertical height difference between these two points, I'm representing it that, so that is nothing but z2 minus z1, and I'm representing it to be dz. So now let me take this triangle where we have ds as the hypotenuse, dz as the height, and the angle with the vertical is nothing but theta. So same thing, which you can see here. Now by a small geometric manipulation, the cos theta is given by dz over ds, and dz I can basically write it as, so moving this to the other side, I can write dz to be ds cos theta. So we just need to keep this in mind, because we'll be using this functional form, or this form, just to simplify our derivation. So just have this in mind. So now let's move on to all the force balances as we talked about. So here we have, so we have the pressure force which is acting, PDA. So here you have a positive PDA, and you have the pressure acting from this side, that is minus P plus dP times dA. So that is minus PDA minus dPdA. So minus PDA minus dPdA. And our body force, the component of the body force, was also acting in the direction which is opposite to the direction of motion of the streamline. So this particular direction, so the component of it. So again, we have a negative for it. And according to the Newton's law, sum of all forces must be equal to the rate of change of momentum. So momentum is nothing but mass into the total derivative of the velocity. So here mass is nothing but the rho times the volume. So rho times dAds gives you the mass, and the total derivative is nothing but has the temporal component as well as the advective term. And so dou v by dou t is the unsteady term in the total derivative, and v dou v by dou s is the advective term. So the reason why we have dou s over here rather than, let's say, in a conventional sense, dou x, dou y, dou z. So dou x, dou y, dou z are some orthogonal coordinates, but here we are looking at only the coordinate in which which represents the direction of your streamline. So the coordinate which represents the direction of the streamline is s over here, because we have named this length of the fluid element as small ds. So here the local coordinate in the direction of the streamline is s, and we are only looking at the direction of motion. We are only looking at the direction in which which is the direction of the streamline. So that is why we have this v dou v by dou s, where v is the velocity basically. So now let's make some few simplifications. So I can cancel out these both terms, and then I can divide and divide the entire equation with dA. and I would be ending up with minus dp rho g ds cos theta rho ds v dou v by dou s plus dou v by dou t. And the next assumption, the next thing which we are going to do is that we already showed in the previous slide that ds cos theta is nothing but dz. So that one small change I make. And also we assume that the flow is steady, so this dou v by dou t term can be cancelled. So we get a final form like this. And one more small mathematical workout which we are doing is here v dou v by dou s times ds. So this is nothing but v dv. It's just like you have, so dou v by dou s is nothing but the slope of that shows the rate of change of velocity with respect to this coordinate s times some small change ds, can basically give you v times what is the change in the velocity. Some basic mathematical workouts, nothing big about it. So this is the form, and then we just rewrite everything, take these terms to the right hand side, and we write dp rho g dz plus rho v dv equal to 0. So this, and then finally a small simplification, a small manipulation where I'm dividing the entire equation with rho. So I have dp by rho g dz v dv equal to 0. So this is called the Euler equation for steady flows, and this is what we are going to so this is the level of simplification we have reached yet. So this is basically a differential equation over here which deals with the change in pressure, change in the height, and the change in velocity. So now to convert this, and you know that the Bernoulli's equation is not a differential, a difference equation or a differential equation, let's say. So I am going to integrate this equation to get our actual Bernoulli's equation. So integration of the Euler equation for steady state gives you, so Euler equation basically means an inverse form of the momentum equation. And now upon that we are adding simplification of steady flow. So that gives you Euler equation for steady flow. And we are integrating each and every term of this equation. So this integral dp by rho integral g dz integral v dv is equal to a constant, because integral of 0 is nothing but some constant. So upon integration we know that, so this term I can basically write it as, so let's say, well, let's look at the first term, that is integral dp by rho. We know that the pressure density is not a function of pressure, so I can take this out of the integral, so it becomes 1 by rho integral dp. So in an infinite integral form, let's say, so this is an indefinite indefinite integral, sorry, not infinite integral, indefinite integral. So this becomes nothing but p by rho. And integral g dz, we are assuming that we are not considering the change of g with respect to z, that consideration. Z is nothing but the vertical height. So g is assuming to be constant for all the vertical heights, more or less. So I can take g outside the integral, and this just becomes gz. And v dv, so integral v dv, so v is a function. I mean, definitely, this is not as straightforward as the other. So we can just do a very small simplification. I can take this v inside the differential form. I can write it as d of v square by 2. So when I use the different uh, I take the difference inside the equation, I get back the same form, v dv. So, and then integral of dv square by 2 is nothing but v square by 2, just normal and just some very simplified calculus. Now when I write it in the final form, you can see that it's nothing but p by rho plus gz plus v square by 2 is equal to a constant. So at any given point, so in our derivation we chose 2 points on a streamline, and then used a, fluid element encompassing it. So with this equation means that the sum of all these terms, p by rho, gz, v square by 2, when I take it at any 2 different points along the length of a streamline, it's basically constant. So Between this point, so let's say I have a streamline, something like this. So this is point one, this is point two. This point might have a different z, a different p, a different v. This have a different p, a different z, a different v. But when I take a sum of it in this fashion, it's going to be constant for both these points. So that is basically the Bernoulli's equation. And one way of looking at it is that the each and every term of this equation represents some energy per mass. So this is some pressure energy per mass, and Gz is nothing but the potential energy. So potential energy, we know that is mgh. So per mass will be gh. So it's potential energy per mass. V square kinetic energy is mv square, and v square by 2. If I take it per mass, it becomes v square. So this is something like an energy kind of a consideration, that the sum of the pressure energy, potential energy, kinetic energy is constant. I mean, per mass is constant throughout throughout a streamline. So keep in mind that this is not an energy equation. The Bernoulli's equation, it's kind of an energy equation basically, but it's not. So in this derivation, it is not being derived from the energy equation. So there are ways you can derive the Bernoulli's equation from the steady state energy equation, which is the first law of thermodynamics. But here we have done it through the momentum equation. So there are a multitude of ways to derive it. So this is one of the simplified manner to do it. And as I mentioned, you can derive it from the first law of thermodynamics too. And a few things, to look out over here is that, so let's say I have a flow field. Let me take a cylinder and a flow field around it. So there are multiple streamlines like this, So let's say that the flow was irrotational. So in such a situation where the flow is irrotational, I can apply the Bernoulli's equation at any two different points in the flow field. Let's say here or here, between these two, between this and this, any two different points, in the flow field. And it is not necessary that these 2 points must belong to the same streamline. So that is under the irrotational flow condition. But for a rotational flow, let's say I draw the same flow field, the 2 points which I apply the Bernoulli's equation on must lie on the same streamline. So that is a constraint when it comes to a rotational flow. Irrotational flow can be applied, at any 2 points in the flow field. It does not mean that both the points must, belong to the same streamline. But in a rotational flow, both the points must belong to the same streamline. And the reason why is a bit more involved. So if we were to derive it in a very mathematical form from the momentum equation, it would be much more clear why we have to do such a, why there is such a constraint. But in the simplified derivation, since we are deriving it only based upon a streamline, it becomes, it may not be that clear. So understanding of this, is a bit more, a little bit more involved. So which, calls for a much more detailed session. So just keep this point in mind for the time being, and we can develop the understanding later on, in much more detailed sessions. So one of the main application for the Bernoulli's equation is nothing but the Pitot tube. So you might be familiar, with the concept of pitot tube. So pitot tube is, very practical kind of device, which they even use in the aircrafts, in the modern age too. Wherein what they have is, as you can see in the figure, they have, it's a probe basically which measures the static pressure and the stagnation pressure. So if I were to explain the static and the stagnation pressure, so let's say that you have a free stream flow. Let's say that your free stream is flowing from left to right over here. So whatever, let's take a given point in the free stream, and whatever the pressure that the free stream is exerting at this particular point, let's say the free stream velocity is v infinity. So whenever I flow with a velocity v infinity, if I try to measure the pressure at any given point in that free stream, so that is what I call as the static pressure. In that sense, that is whenever a flow is moving, at a particular velocity, um, the pressure which is being measured, the pressure which is exerted by the fluid particles in that given flow at any given point is what I would call as the static pressure, at a given point. So it could be numerous. So let's say I take a cylindrical flow. So for here it is the free stream, but as we go closer to the cylinder, you'll have the effects of the solid body, and your velocity might increase, decrease, and all these things. So at any given point, in the flow field, if I keep a probe and then try to see, and the velocities are different, so it's v infinity over here, it might be v1, v2, at different points in the flow field. So at any different point in the flow field, let's say I keep a probe to measure the pressure, or the pressure exerted by the collision of the fluid particles, collision of the fluid molecules. So that is what I call as the static pressure, p static. And P naught is the stagnation pressure. So stagnation pressure is nothing but, let's say you have a flow moving at a velocity v infinity, and you brought it to rest. You brought it to zero velocity in an isentropic way. So the pressure exerted by the pressure exerted by the fluid particles, or fluid molecules, when it has been brought down to zero velocity, is what we call as the stagnation pressure. So if I were to illustrate it, we know that all the solid body has a stagnation point where the fluid, the free stream would collide head on head with the body, and then it goes to rest. Now, assuming that this process of going to rest is isentropic, that is, that's a reversible process, and it's adiabatic, so there are no losses involved. So at this point, your velocity is basically nothing but v equal to zero, right? And if I were to measure the pressure at this particular point, that is what I call as the stagnation pressure. So according to a Bernoulli's equation, we have, let's say, P by rho plus Gz plus V square by 2 is equal to constant. Now, let me just, rearrange this equation, and let me just write it as P plus rho Gz plus rho V square by 2 is equal to some constant. So this is applicable. Let's say the flow is rotational in this case. Let's say you take your domain like this. Your flow is rotational, and this equation is applicable between any two points. Let's say 1 and 2. So at 1, the P is P1, Z is Z1, V is V1. At point 2, P is P2, V2, Z2. So it's not, so I can write the Bernoulli's equation as P1 plus rho G Z1 plus rho V1 square by 2 is equal to P2 plus rho G Z2 plus rho V2 square by 2. Now, P1 is the static pressure at point 1, V1 is the velocity at point 1, P2 is the static pressure at point 2, V2 is the velocity at point 2. Now, so this is basically, the application of Bernoulli. So if I have the pressure and velocity, at point 1, and let's say a pressure at point 2, I can easily find the velocity at point 2, and assuming that I have Z2. So it's just, finding an unknown from, all the other knowns kind of a problem. So let's say, I apply this Bernoulli's equation between the stagnation point and any other point. So let me think of it in this way. So I have a flow. This is the stagnation point. I'm calling this point as O or 0, whatever. And I have the free stream coming. And free stream has a static pressure of P infinity and V infinity. So I'm going to take a point in the free stream, let's say 1. So if I were to apply the Bernoulli's equation between point 0 and 1, I would get something like this. So I'm assuming that, the Z for the same, Z for point 1 and point 0 are the same. They are at the same height, or the height difference is negligible. So I can remove both the terms on both the sides. So, and that is what, we usually do, that we neglect the height term or the potential energy term, from the Bernoulli's equation. So let's look at only the pressure term and the velocity term. And usually always the height term is usually very negligible. So what is the static pressure at this point? Nothing but P naught. What is the velocity at this point? 0. So the kinetic energy term is 0. And if I look at point 1, the static pressure is P infinity, and the velocity is half rho V infinity square. The velocity is V infinity. So so now how it works is that I have P naught, which is the stagnation pressure for the flow. But if I were to call it like a local pressure, it's the static pressure when measured at the stagnation point, something like that. You can think of it as. So P naught is the stagnation pressure. P infinity is the static pressure of the free stream. P infinity is the velocity of the free stream. So this gives me an equation. If I know the static pressure and the velocity of the free stream, I can find what is the stagnation pressure. So irrespective of where the stagnation is happening, within the given flow field, it could be here, it could be here, anywhere let it be, but I still can find what is the stagnation pressure. Or let's say so pressure is usually easily measurable than any other quantity, and also in a lot of practical cases we measure the pressure and from that we get the velocity. So if I know that if I keep a probe here to measure the pressure, if I keep a probe here to measure the pressure, so let's say I have two pressure transducers, kept at these points, I know what is P naught and I know what is P infinity, and rho is basically a constant. So I can easily find out what is the velocity of the free stream. So that is, the application of the Bernoulli's equation in a practical sense. And pitot tube is, one practical way of doing it, that you have a probe. The center line over here, measures the stagnation pressure, and there are various ports present over here. So stagnation pressure, the velocity is 0, so you have P naught with you. And there are static ports here, which measure the P infinity for you. And now the P naught and the static port which measures the static pressure, and the center line which measures the stagnation pressure, are connected to two ends of a manometer. And so since P naught is greater than P infinity, so the fluid basically displaces more in the leg which is connected to the stagnation kind of line, and the fluid is displaced less, to the port, the port which is connected to the static line. And just from any manometer kind of, and just like any manometer, the delta P between both the limbs is given by rho G H, H being the height difference between both the limbs. So delta P in this case is nothing but P naught minus P infinity, because one measures the static pressure, one measures the stagnation pressure. So P naught minus P infinity is nothing but rho GH. And this rho is the density of the fluid in the manometer, not the density of the free stream. And P naught minus P, we already know that it is half rho V infinity square. So let me, just for notation purpose, call it rho infinity. This is rho GH basically. So I know rho infinity, I know rho, I know H from the manometer, G is also unknown. So I can easily find what is my V. Or let's say, I do not use a manometer, I use some other method to calculate what is the pressure P naught and P infinity. I can, directly use the equation and find out, what is the velocity. So that is how, we measure the pressure here. And this is going to come in a lot of problems, as you see from the gate point of view, which we will be seeing, as we go on. And yeah, so now with these understanding, let's solve some problems. And just a concept before that, I had mentioned that. So let me look at this equation again. P infinity plus half rho V infinity square is equal to P naught. I call this as the static pressure of the free stream, and I call this as the stagnation pressure of the flow. And this term is what we call as the dynamic pressure. It's some kind of equivalent pressure force brought into action because of the velocity of the free stream or velocity of the flow. So this is static pressure. This is what we call as the dynamic pressure. This is the stagnation pressure. And stagnation pressure for a given flow configuration will be constant. When we are neglecting all the height effects. But based upon which point you're looking at in the flow field, whether it's in the free stream or it is over the body, your static pressure and your dynamic pressure can vary within the flow field. So what I mean with that is, let's look at a case here. Let's say you have a cylinder. So this is a free stream coming from here. So free stream has a static pressure P infinity. It has a dynamic pressure of half rho infinity V infinity square. And where at the stagnation points we have pressure P naught. But as you know that the pressure and velocity keeps changing from point to point, in the flow field. If I take this point, the pressure might be P1, so static pressure becomes P1, which is different from P infinity, and half rho infinity because density we are assuming constant, and V1 square. So the dynamic pressure changes and the static pressure changes throughout the flow field, but their equivalence, that the sum of both is always equal to the stagnation pressure. If you look at it in that way. So these are, some things to keep in mind before we, attack the problems. So now let's move on and, see some of the previous year gate problems and, try to solve them. So let's see our first problem here. So it's a previous year gate problem, which we are looking at. So the first problem that we have is, based upon the Bernoulli's equation. Let's take a look at that. Let's go over the problem once. The relation between an airplane's true airspeed and equivalent airspeed in terms of the density ratio, where rho naught is the air density at sea level, and rho is the air density at the altitude in which the airplane is flying. So to break down the problem, there are two things mentioned. What is the true airspeed? There are two airspeed for an aircraft and equivalent airspeed for the aircraft. Rho naught is the density at the sea level. Rho is the density at an altitude in which the airplane is flying. So the question here is, so let's, before we know the question, understand the question, let me explain to you what is a true airspeed and what is a equivalent airspeed. So consider you have an aircraft which is flying, at some height, altitude h, at some altitude h, and this is the sea level, which they have mentioned over here. And the pitot tube, in front of the aircraft would basically, measure some kind of P infinity and P naught. And P naught minus P infinity is nothing but your dynamic pressure, right? It's rho infinity, V infinity square. So the idea here is that if my pitot tube gives me P naught and P infinity, can I find, with the information of rho infinity, which is the information I already have, can I find what is the velocity of the flight? So what a true airspeed means is that is the, let's say, so the density at sea level, what they've mentioned here is rho naught, and the density at this altitude is rho, or, for the free stream it's rho infinity. So if I were to find out, let's say that, with some, measuring instruments, I find out what is the density at this altitude h, and use it in this equation and find V infinity. That V infinity becomes my V true airspeed, because you're using the right density for the altitude and then correspondingly finding the velocity of the free stream. So that corresponds to a true airspeed. But what an equivalent airspeed means is that I know P naught and P infinity from my pitot tube, but unfortunately I do not have the instruments to find out what is the density at this particular altitude. So what I do is that I calculate my velocity based upon what is the density of my sea level, which usually is around 1.225 kg per meter cube. So when I calculate my velocity based upon the density at sea level, what velocity I get is called as the equivalent airspeed. So it is the equivalent of using a sea level density rather than the actual density at the altitude. So now what they are asking us in the question is, what is the relationship between the true airspeed and the equivalent airspeed in terms of this density ratio? Now to attack that, let me rewrite it. We have that P naught minus P is equal to half rho V infinity square. So let's say I'm going to use the actual density, of rho, let's say as per the question given, density at the particular height. So my P naught and P are really independent of P infinity, let's say, is independent of any other density which we use. They are constants. I mean, they are constant, based upon whatever, the way you're measuring it. So let's say I am to use the density at that particular altitude, rho, and this V becomes V TAS square. Now, P naught minus P infinity is equal to half. Let's say I use the density at the sea level, rho naught. Now this velocity becomes VEAS square. Now you can see that the left hand side for both the equations are the same. So which means that I am trying to, so the dynamic, which means that the dynamic pressure for both VAS and TAS and EAS both are the same. So this is basically a problem in which we are trying two different densities and trying to find two different velocities such that they have the same dynamic pressure for a given altitude. So it's basically like a matching of the dynamic pressure which we are doing. So the right hand side, so both these, since left hand side is equal, so the right hand side must be equal. So half rho V TAS square is equal to half rho V EAS square of rho naught. So half cancel. So they are asking us the ratio between VEAS and VTAS. So let me take this VTAS to the other side. So VEAS by VTAS whole square is equal to rho by rho naught. And I take the root to the other side. So the ratio becomes root of rho by rho naught. And rho by rho naught, they have mentioned in the question, can be denoted by sigma. So your VEAS by VTAS is nothing but root of sigma, option C. Now let's look at a different question, but very connected to this question. So an airplane is flying at an altitude of 10 kilometers above the sea level, and outside air temperature and density at 10 kilometer altitude are 223 Kelvin and 0.413. So you have the airplane flying at 10 kilometer altitude, and you have the rho infinity, that is the density of the free stream there, 0.413 kg per meter cube, and T infinity. So whatever is for the free stream, I'm just going to represent it by infinity. So 223 Kelvin. The airspeed indicator of the aircraft indicates a speed of 60 meters per second. Now we have a velocity 60 meters per second. So it is the airspeed indicator of the aircraft which gives us 60 meters per second. But in reality, it's this 60 meters per second is the VEAS, because the airplane's indicator does not know what is the density of that particular altitude. So whatever the velocity it has calculated is based upon the density of the sea level. So the 60 meters per second is nothing but EAS. And EAS is not the actual velocity of the free stream. It is just an equivalent form of expressing it. And they've given density at sea level is 1.225 and R is 288 joule per kg Kelvin. The stagnation pressure of P0 measured by the pitot tube motor on the wingtip of the airplane will be of magnitude. So they're asking us what is the stagnation pressure at that particular altitude. So let's go back to the our equation. P infinity plus half rho infinity V infinity square is equal to P0, right? So to calculate P0, we need the static pressure at that particular height, and we need the dynamic pressure, right? Now, how to calculate the static pressure? So let's break it down, in that way. Let's calculate the static pressure first. Static pressure can be easily measured, from the ideal gas equation. P infinity is equal to rho infinity RT infinity. So rho infinity is nothing but 0.413. R they've given it as 288, and T infinity is 223. So that would basically give us a value of P infinity to be around 26524.512 pascals. So we have got the first part of the equation. Now we want the dynamic pressure. So dynamic pressure is half rho infinity V infinity square. But we know rho infinity, but V infinity is not known to us. So the dynamic pressure is also equivalent to half rho naught VEAS square, like how we saw. So rho naught we know 1.225. VEAS is given by the airspeed indicator. So that would be half 1.225 into 60 square. And that basically, would give you what is your, the value of dynamic pressure, which has a value of around 2205 pascals. So now we have the dynamic pressure as well as the static pressure. So P naught is nothing but the sum of both. So your static pressure is of the value 26524 plus, and you have the dynamic pressure 2205, and that basically would give you 28729 pascals, and which is nothing but option C, 2.87 into 10 power 4 Newton per meter square. Newton per meter square is nothing but pascals. So you really do not have to go and find the true airspeed here. You can just, use this equivalence between the dynamic pressure to calculate what is the dynamic pressure. So moving on to the next question. So here, what we have is, a pretty similar question. An aircraft is cruising at 9 kilometer altitude. The free stream static pressure and density at this altitude are, so P infinity is 3.08 into 10 power 4 pascals, and rho infinity is 0.467. A pitot tube mounted on the wing senses a pressure of 3.31 10 power 4. Ignoring the compressibility effects, the cruising speed of the aircraft is approximately. Now, so here they've given us, you can ignore the compressibility effects. So if we were to consider compressibility effects, then we have to find, what would be, use the gas dynamics relations to find out what is the the velocity. So since we are ignoring the compressibility effects, we can straight away, use the Bernoulli's equation in this case. So they have given us, so the pitot tube in sense the pressure of 3.31. So this is nothing but the P naught, and you have the P infinity, and you have the rho infinity too. So this becomes a very simplified problem. So P naught minus P infinity is half rho infinity V infinity square. So when we do the calculations, you would find out so when we take the difference between P naught and P infinity, we get a value of around 2300 pascals. And when we do these, when we take 2 to the other side divided by rho infinity, and finally we end up with a V infinity of around 99.2 meters per second, and which from the list of options you can, it's closer to option B, 100 meters per second. So that is your answer. And since we are talking about the compressibility part, so there was one thing which you need to take care, that is all incompressible flows are characterized by a Mach number less than 0.3 or in and around that region. It's based upon some kind of density equal density less than change less than 10% kind of a formulation. So what you need to take care is that whenever they present you with a problem, before applying the Bernoulli's equation, you need to calculate the Mach number of that problem. Let's say Mach number is nothing but velocity by speed of sound. And if in such a scenario it comes to less than 3, or maybe very close to that, you can directly apply the Bernoulli's equation. But let's say if the Mach number is greater than, let's say, 0.4 or 0.4 to 0.5, then you always have to go back to gas dynamics and then use those formulations to find out what is the total pressure and things like that, because Bernoulli's equation does not consider the compressibility effects. So similar to we in the previous problem which we did, we need to look out what would be the Mach number, and if the Mach number is in and around the region of 0.3, then you can directly apply the Bernoulli's equation, and and that would be the correct way. I know that would be the easier way of doing it. But if, let's say, in any of the questions Mach number is, let's say, 0.5 above or 0.4 above, then it's always best to use the gas dynamic relations to yeah, have any to do away with many of the complications that come in. Yeah.